You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Jonesy. Your eyes and ears do not deceive you. Albert is taking the show off for tonight, but with me, I have an amazing guest with us who, of course, is no stranger to all of you. He is one of the favorite sons of Canada, the one and only fearless Fred Kennedy himself. Fred, my friend, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm so good. I'm stoked. I'm excited because I'm excited to talk about what we've got on tap for today. These are things that I have opinions and feelings about.
I love it when you have opinions and feelings. And for those, welcome everyone to the Waystation. This is your source for Star Wars news and rumors. Tonight is Sunday, September 29th. It's been a little over a month since we've done a Waystation, so we've got a lot to bring you up to speed on. So we'll kind of hit the highlights of what's happened over the last many weeks, things that we think are important for y'all to know about. And before we get started here, a special thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially our now part of the tribe, Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn, and our Delusions Grander members. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, and Steve. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Immediately following the Waystation, Albert and I will be doing episode 2 of our Star Wars A New Hope breakdown. So if you missed what we did last week, basically we looked for an excuse to break down Star Wars A New Hope because we've never done it. Our predecessors have never done it. And we looked for an excuse. And so we found one. And so we decided to break it into bite-sized chunks and kind of make it into a TV series of sorts. So we've been breaking that down. We're going to do the second episode tonight around 10 p.m. Central, right after Fred and I are done here and go in that route. One last thing before we get started here. Also, it was a very happy birthday to Albert. His birthday was this last week. He shares it with Mark Hamill. I guess we'll wish one to Mark Hamill as well. But my friend, happy birthday. Hope it was a fantastic one. Hope you're enjoying a little downtime. And we hope it was a really good one for you.
27th, right?
20s, yeah.
Yep.
Multiples of 27,
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
is what it is. But let's go and get into it, Fred. So Albert and I did this episode 575, a celebration of James Earl Jones. Of course, he passed at 93 about a couple of weeks ago here now. And I just want to give you an opportunity, though, to be able to kind of share what James Earl Jones meant to you, his legacy, you know, with Star Wars and beyond Star Wars. It's just such a great body of work that he had over the decades of work. But any thoughts on James Earl Jones passing and what that has meant to you?
You know, it's funny, like a story's really only as good as its villain. And for anybody who's seen the non-dubbed Star Wars with the original voiceover, like the studio mic take, listening to that and then comparing it, like juxtaposing it straight with the James Earl Jones VO, he breathes life into the character. No pun with all the breathing sound effects and whatnot, but like that presence just cuts through, like the physical performance of David Prowse and then the auditory performance of James Earl Jones, like the physical power on screen, the vocal power coming through. Like there's the term like good audio is visual. Right. And I think the audio he brings to the table as Darth Vader it's you can't overstate it. And what's interesting too is like when he passed away, of course, immediately, like as Star Wars do or die, you know, like that's always my go-to fandom is Star Wars. It's sort of like the backdrop for everything. But as I was thinking about James Earl Jones over the next few days, because it was so omnipresent, everybody's talking about it, like Tulsa Doom as well. I don't think that anybody can overlook Tulsa Doom. And he has this way of elevating dialogue, because I think a lot of people make jokes about the original Conan the Barbarian. And it's frustrating because I feel like it's a movie with a brilliant screenplay, great performances, and an okay budget, but it's so strong. And the dialogue, like, do you want to know, steel is weak. What is a sword next to the hand that wields it? Like all the dialogue that he gives you. And he's so powerful, like right up until the very end. Like, what are you without me? I made you. I gave you this. And it's just I went through this big like soul searching, like I'm on the train watching clips, being like, God, he's so great. He's so great. You know what I mean? Like you forget, you really do. And I think that you and I were similar ages, and you start to really like get nostalgic about these things, and you realize who's been around your whole life. And it's like Vader has been around my whole life. One of my earliest memories is going to the mall to see Darth Vader at the mall, you know, and being so amazed by seeing Darth Vader. It was not the real Darth Vader. It was a guy in a costume at a mall in Nova Scotia. But
Right.
to me, it was this huge.
That's not allowed to speak, right?
Yeah, he was so terrifying, you know. He was so terrifying. And then going to Disney with my kids, and we have these pictures of us meeting Vader, and my youngest was wearing his Darth Vader pajamas all day because he knew we were going to meet Darth Vader. And then you've got that like dialogue in the can, and he starts talking, and he calls my youngest his apprentice and says they're going to rule the galaxy. And it's like that voice. So great. Right. Yeah. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. He's so important.
No, and you touched on a great point, because I think in James Earl Jones, one of the things that we had talked about when we did the show was how much credit he gave to Dave Prowse for the physical presence. Anytime he did an interview and people wanted to talk about how it was the voice of Vader is just so predominant in our culture now and the legacy it's left, he continued to give props to Dave Prowse of saying, look, he brought that character to life and we loved it. You're right. It's such a combination. Star Wars has always been it's more the sum of all of its parts, right? It's the visual, it's the sound, it's the music, it's the idea and the fantasy of it as well, right? All of those things coming together is what makes it so special. And I think Darth Vader is one of those characters that encapsulates that type of spirit in the character, with the physical presence, the voice, the breathing, the lights on the chest plate, you know, just all of the things that come, costuming, all the things come together to make a character that is just, you know, amazing. And I'm with you. You know, Tulsa Doom's always an interesting one, because you have to be an amazing actor to overcome that exceptionally long, straight hair that they put James Earl Jones in, and to still like be taken seriously, because that hair was awful, especially for the character, but he still brought it to life. It was still amazing. And he just did that with so many parts, though. I told Albert, I grew up watching like Hunt for Red October with my family, you know, and Admiral James Greer, of course, Mufasa. Just so many amazing parts, so many, the theater work that he did, and it was incredible as well. So, you know, your experience on the train of trying to, you know, reconcile what the news brought to us, you know,
perfect word.
Yeah, it's just so difficult, because he's just been so present in our lexicon of storytelling for so long, and he was just always there.
Like his delivery of dialogue on the soft end, that range of being able to punch with the diaphragm on his words, like as when Susan Sarandon was the ballet teacher on The Simpsons, and she goes, from the fire in the belly, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like when I think about the way he would deliver dialogue, the fire in the belly is there, but he could always come across so soft as well. Like that really poignant scene at the end of Jedi when he was like, nothing can stop that now, just the way he says everything. Oh, so good.
It's amazing. Yeah, a true talent, and someone that will be missed. And unfortunately, we just keep getting a lot of kind of sad news of people that we're losing these days, unfortunately. But, you know, we have a chance to come back and celebrate them on the other side. So maybe on a more positive front.
Yes, let's pick it up.
Yeah. So Ewan McGregor honored with the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And if that wasn't special enough, he had a nice little speech and introduction by Hayden Christensen. So how awesome is it, to have another Star Wars, or someone who played a Star Wars character, right? Someone so kind of like Darth Vader, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's just such a present force in all of most of the movies, or at least the legacy of Star Wars. But, you know, Ewan McGregor having to come in and pick up from where Alec Guinness left this off many, many years later. And then also this form of this friendship between Ewan and Hayden Christensen after all these years. How special is it to see Hayden kind of introduce him into the Walk of Fame? Of course, Ewan's family was there as well, but how cool is it that they have this brotherly friendship all these years after doing the movies and the prequel trilogy?
I really feel guilty about the way I reacted to a lot of aspects of the prequels. I was like a late teens, early 20s, and I was like, you know, you're almost like looking for reasons to complain. And I think I'm glad that social media didn't exist then, because I could have like slipped into some fandom menace, as Albert so eloquently says all the time.
Right.
And I see things now like with a very different perspective, and like rewatching the prequel movies with my kids and seeing their performance come to the surface as opposed to what I wanted to see. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that that watching them now and the way their friendship has developed through the years and the way they've sort of like wrapped themselves in the characters, I think is fantastic. I also think a big turning point for me, specifically with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, isn't even necessarily his performance, but those Genndy Tartakovsky hand animated ones that where he fights Dirge. Remember that?
Oh, those are amazing.
Watching that and then seeing the Revenge of the Sith in the theater, I think made me a much bigger fan of Ewan McGregor in the role, you know? And it's like it gave me a new point of reference, because you build like almost like fan canon in your head about the things that you love about Alec Guinness and what you envisioned, and then you don't get what you'd hoped for. You get something different. And then you see that like scene where he fights Dirge and he gets sucked inside him and blows him up. And then when you next see Ewan McGregor on camera, you're like, that's the guy that iced Dirge on the banking planet. He's awesome, man.
Or did he?
Or did he? Yeah. You know, it's just I feel like I view Obi-Wan Kenobi as Ewan McGregor first now. And there may be some people that think that's a sacrilege, but that's just the way I feel about it. And I don't think that Alec Guinness, I think a lot of people say that Alec Guinness hated Star Wars, which I don't think is the case at all. But I don't think Alec Guinness loved Star Wars as much as Ewan McGregor loves it. And when you watch his performance in Obi-Wan specifically, there's so much love for the universe, for the character, for that whole world. Like he's playing in it. And I remember one of my friends, my buddy Dila, who is a producer on Mud 79. She's the contemptible harpy, as I always call her. She's one of my favorite people to talk about Star Wars with, because her opinions are always great. But we both say the script, it's about a 6. But Ewan McGregor brings it to an 8. You know what I mean? Like he breathes life into it. He's so charismatic when he goes, hello there. I'm like, hello. Like it makes me all excited.
Yeah, it's funny how the characters can bring even kind of crappy dialogue to life and just bring that little something extra. You're like, you know what? I know this isn't great, but man, I love what I'm seeing and I love what I'm experiencing. They still draw me in some way. And you're right, Ewan McGregor, it's like Ewan McGregor and James Arnold Taylor are like Obi-Wan Kenobi for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Visually, it's Ewan McGregor. Audibly, it tends to be Jat, right? Because of the voicing of Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
And so
you've seen him so many times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's Alec, what Alec Guinness did for us though was really ground the character and give us a character that we can love and come back to. And then we had Ewan McGregor really help to flesh this out. What does the relationship mean with Anakin? And I love this bond that we had both on screen with Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as now we have this kind of friendship outside of the show that has persisted so long. And I think that brings a little something extra. It's the same with the Clone Wars, the voice actors for Clone Wars too. They have such a relationship outside of the content that I think makes its way into the content, right? And when you have that chemistry, it's like a good sitcom show. Like I was reading an article about Frasier, right? How maybe Frasier, the newer season, maybe it feels okay, but it's not like what it used to be, right? And it's just that chemistry and that magic. Whenever you find it, you have to really seize it and not let go of it, because it's really difficult to duplicate and replicate that.
It's fascinating with the animated aspects of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because when you see the Clone Wars, you're clearly seeing Ewan McGregor. But then when you see, which is one of my all-time favorite Star Wars scenes, the Darth Maul Obi-Wan scene in Rebels.
Yeah.
That's clearly Alec Guinness. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you don't even question it. You're like, here we are. This is the perfect bridge for me. Just that scene is just, it's perfection. It's so good. And you really see the development of the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi that really Ewan McGregor gave us. And I think watching that scene and picking up on little bits of notes and here and there. Maybe it's just because I'm watching with my kids and full of feelings and whatnot, but I really feel like that moment's a real complete moment. And I love Ewan McGregor in that role so much. He's so charming. And to think that like the first time we all saw him was Renton, like, and then look at him now. Look at him go. Good for him.
That's the thing when you think about the character we had like in Train Spotting and
Yeah.
like when he was just like young, just full of fire and just against the cigarettes and the smoking all the time and just seemed to be defiant in everything, right? And that youthful enthusiasm that was just reckless seeming. And then you look at him now, you're like, wow, he's like this charming, well-rounded individual. And back then he was just a spitfire, it was just a bundle of get out of my way. It's just, and I don't know if that was reality or not, but that's kind of how it came across. And it's just, it's funny the journey we go on as people, I think, throughout this. But huge congratulations to Ewan McGregor. It was really cool that Hayden Christensen got there, got to be there with him as well. And cool that we've got another Star Wars actor on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's pretty cool. All right, so another piece of sad news to rebound a little bit here is at the age of 52, we lost John Cassidy, who maybe not a name that everyone is as familiar with, but when Star Wars rebooted the Marvel Comics line, this is something I think I wanted to bring with. I knew you were going to be on the show. I was like, all right, I got to bring this up.
Yeah.
James Cassidy passed away. He was the artist on the interior panels, and due to copyright, we're not going to show all of that, but we'll show the cover here from the volume 1, or I guess it's technically volume 2 of Marvel that came out in 2015. When they relaunched Marvel's Star Wars, the flagship comic, he was the interior artist. And, the first 6 issues, I believe, 5 or 6 issues is where he was the interior artist. And this was really important to get right when they rebooted this, to reestablish this and really capture these original trilogy characters in these moments and give us not only start to bridge kind of build a new world and really build that out, but to also bring that spirit of what was being written, but also bring that spirit to the pages here. And, John Cassidy was a big part of why this comic was so popular to launch and has remained so popular, just because this footing is so important. But, a few words about John Cassidy, these first, handful of issues from the original Star Wars line in the 2015 series.
I was so cynical about this when it was being released. Like,
I was nervous about it.
100%. Yeah, maybe cynical is not the right word. Like, because they won me over, like the classic wrestling term. I was over the ropes right away. Right. But as soon as I heard with Jason Aaron and John Cassidy teaming up on a book together, for me, I'm like, well, we're gonna get something good. Like Jason Aaron's like the classic guy to do everything solid, going all the way back to his Vertigo books with Scalp and whatnot, and then when he was taking over on Conan, second Conan drop of the day there, but then him coming in and doing the Star Wars books is fantastic with John Cassidy's art. And the thing with John Cassidy's art is he's got style. There's that classic line, don't draw like them, draw like you. It's He had a style that just pops as soon as you saw his work on the page. And it's sort of like Jai Lee. It's not for everyone. Not everybody's going to love it, but I really loved it right away. It just looked different. It was striking and powerful. I loved Cassidy's work. And what's also funny is my boss, when I first started working in Toronto, was also named John Cassidy, and we get fan mail for him all the time.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I like to touch on what you were saying. What I liked about it is he would still capture the spirit of characters like Han Solo. So often what we see when characters get drawn into comics, sometimes they don't have any detail, or they want to put their own spin on it, so they don't even look like the character sometimes, or you have this inconsistency of what the character might look like this panel versus another panel on a different page. John Cassidy's work is really consistent, and it gives, like you said, it's enough of his own style in there, but you still know the character is instantly recognizable. The work is so clean, I think, too, which I really appreciate in comics. Sometimes it's easy to get too much activity in a panel on a page to where you can't figure out what is going on.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about these, but they're still very kinetic and very dynamic panels, too. When there's a lot of action, it's still very well drawn. And it was like you said, it was important to get this right. And I think they found the right person to get this done.
When you're talking about the kinetic aspect of the action on the pages and the way things look, they can't look like they're posed. They look like they're fluid. He made everything look fluid, but the thing about Cassidy's work is it looks cool. And I don't know how to explain that, but it's if you find out when you're in high school the guy in the smoking section is a cool artist, like his art's gonna be cool. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you look at Cassidy, it's just that's what the cool kids like. You know, he's good. Like he's so good at what he does, and it's accessible. It's not one of those like you'd have to be an artist to really get what's going on here. It's like no, you get it right away. You know, I don't know like how many comic artists you talk to, but like sometimes you'll ask them a question: why is this guy a big deal? Well, you got to really get art to understand what's going on here. It's like no,
if I have to get it, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like I want to bring me in right away. I want to flip it open. I want to see like a big double splash, and I want to like feel like I'm drawn in. And he had a way of doing that without you even realizing it, because he draws your eye to one thing, and then without you're subconsciously taking in everything around the big important part of the panel. But he does it so effortlessly, and not everybody can do that. You know, it's just simple. Not everybody can, and not saying everybody should try, but like he was really good at that.
Yeah. So, John Cassidy, we'll miss you. Thank you for what you contributed to Star Wars. This is again kind of more sad news. Unfortunately, 52 years old, still very young. So, definitely a loss for our community, and especially those who enjoy comics and the artist side, the artistry side of comics very much. So. Sad to see that, but wanted to celebrate him a little bit here with that as well.
And if you haven't read his X-Men stuff, by the way, his X-Men stuff
really?
is like unbelievable work with X-Men as well. So yeah,
sorry,
had to throw that in.
Hey, send us a note. We'll get you those X-Men comic issues if you're interested in the X-Men.
Yeah.
All right, so really quick in the movie side of things, this is pretty light. New Jedi Order. So Daisy really had an article in I think it's called Premiere. It's a French magazine, so it was all in French. But it was basically, they were just kind of talking about if she was excited, if she had to come back to Star Wars or whatever. But she talked a little bit about her journey that, you know, she was really young when she came into this part of Rey. And it took with the criticism and stuff that came along with it over the course of the few movies, it took a long time. And we see this as a genuine arc, I think. We talked about Ewan McGregor earlier, and Hayden Christensen had a really hard time with all of the criticism. But as they get older, as fans get a little bit older, as the material sinks in and people become more appreciative of it over time, they get that clarity of purpose, right? Or that clarity of hindsight and growth and everything. And so the article was a little bit about that as well, but also some of the things coming in the New Jedi Order a little outside of this article have been around the space of maybe they've lost another writer. Like maybe the third writer is now off the project, or they're kind of rotating. As someone that's in the creative business, like this is what you do, right? This is your life. This is a pretty typical process, right? But does this give you any additional concern for the health of New Jedi Order, or is this just par for the course? And this is all really hyped up because of the sensitivity of when are we actually going to get a Star Wars movie, and are they all in jeopardy, and just the general dismay around when are we going to get something? But do you have any concerns here about a possible another change in a writer here?
I do, but it's anything that I say from like a creative standpoint. All the comic book work that I've done is very low. I have not done anything with the House of Mouse at all. Like no Marvel, no nothing. Maybe we'll see. But from my understanding of things is that you can have a fantastic script and idea until somebody comes along with their idea of what they need to do to make it sell. They know what's going to make it sell, like the producer from hell. I think we've all heard the infamous story of the Superman movie, Kevin Smith talking about it, and Superman's got to fight the giant spiders, and then he does Wild Wild West, and what happens at the end, there's a giant spider. That is a very real thing, and that is just one story amongst hundreds. So I'm not as concerned about the writer so much as I am concerned about them letting a writer who knows how to tell a story tell their story. And we talked a lot about the Acolyte, and I think that all of us felt like we saw the Acolyte, and then we saw a bunch of stuff that somebody from the upper floors said, you know what's good? This is good to appeal to this demographic. This is good to appeal to that demographic. And it's like, let them tell their story. You know, let them tell their story. You don't need to appeal to everyone all the time. And I think that the importance of Rey's character cannot be understated. And I can say that as a parent, you know, I hate it when people say stuff like that. As a parent, but like my friends who have daughters, this was a real big moment of growth for me as a parent, was when a bunch of my buddies who had daughters that are like 9 and 10 years old going to see uh, the Rise of Skywalker, not the Rise of Skywalker,
Force
the
Awakens.
Force Awakens, that's the one, with Rey for the first time, seeing that in theaters, and them being like, my daughters have their own Jedi now. You know, they've got their own Jedi. And I was like, well, actually, in the canon, there's all these other, but they've never seen it on the screen. There's never been a movie for them. And I think that you and I can sit here and talk about the story and how it's this and it's that and how cool it is. But I think that we're coming at it from a different perspective from all these now teenagers, now girls in like their 20s, women out there in the workforce that went to the theater to see a woman Jedi for the first time and got to see their own character up there. And I think that that is a huge deal. And it's like, I would love to see a really slick, super cool story on the screen. And I can guarantee you that there's 1,000 screenwriters out there that can do it. At the end of the day, I think that this character, the Rey character, is so important for so many young women out there and so many people in whatever, across every walk of life. But the question isn't whether or not we can get a great writer, it's if they'll just be allowed to write a great story. I think that's my biggest concern. Writers being pulled in and out for one thing or another. When you say writers getting pulled out, my immediate reaction is they don't want to work with a pile of notes on every scene that they're writing. And I can wager that that's exactly what's happening, you know?
Yeah, there's such a variety of reasons why writers move in and out of projects too. And sometimes you have an idea and you pitch it, something to kind of explore and go with it, but it doesn't work out either. Maybe the depth and the detail is just not coming and it just doesn't feel right too. I think there's an aspect of that too. Also, can you work with others and, being able to collaborate, and then are you okay? Like you said, if there is a lot of influence coming from external forces, so to speak, is that something that you're able to kind of work with and you still feel like your vision for it is going to be able to come through, right? And does it all jive in the right way to
Such a
make
great
movies?
character though. Like there's so many great stories you can tell in that setting. Like so many ways you can do it. You can go big scale, you can go small scale, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm confident that there's so many great things that can be done, but I'm always a little bit leery, just as you are, when I hear about writer going in, writer going out, writer going in, writer going out. I mean, Rian Johnson took so much crap for The Last Jedi, and it's like, are you going to tell me that the guy who did Knives Out can't write an amazing screenplay? Is this what are you gonna tell me that? Like, watch Knives Out and then be like, really? I believe that I would love to, like, there was the director's cut. I don't even think the director's cut exists, because by the time they got to shooting, the director's cut was gone. But I would love to see that original story that he wanted to do,
Yeah, because it supposedly was like 3+ hours long. It was ridiculously long.
I did it for Lord of the Rings. I'll do it for this too.
Right, exactly.
I got a strong bladder. I can handle it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think with like you said, the character of Rey is so important. But now that you have the opportunity, now that the Skywalker saga is closed, and I know she kind of represents a piece of that now, but you have a lot of opportunity to go in a lot of different directions. Like you said, you can bring it as a bigger scale. Let's launch a whole new thing, or you can bring it back and make it a smaller, more intimate type of tale and story that's more specific to what you want to tell with Rey specifically, or what her challenges are with bringing the Jedi Order back and things like that. So I think there's optionality now that they don't have, now that you're not as bound to Luke Skywalker, I think more specifically in the Skywalker family. And now you can kind of see what that next phase of it looks like, and whether or not that's interesting is what they're trying to figure out here. So I'm with you. Some of this stuff is more optic based than anything else. It doesn't feel right. I think we're a little bit jaded because of Solo, in the way that the difficulty that had with losing people. I think even Rogue One is an extension of that too. A lot of chaos with the development of it. So anytime we have any kind of news, it feels like people, and then we've had a lot of history of people moving off and on projects. Lord and Miller was a really high profile one, a number of others as well. It just feels like, oh, here we go here, and here we go again. It's just another just a constant flow of people in and out of the Star Wars, but not a lot of product. So I understand that, but also some of it's kind of typical for the process of finding the right mix. But Yeah, this is a character I'm with you. I think we got to get it right. There's so much negativity, unfortunately, associated with it now because of the mixed reactions to some of the films. But I would like for her to kind of have her own space and see, because it's been 9 years since this character came out. So like you said, a lot of these younger people who saw and were influenced by this character are now becoming more adult, right? And they
Yeah.
early adulthood or coming into adulthood, or maybe you're getting into the workplace, like you said, and they are looking for something like that again to kind of rekindle some of that fire.
I do wonder, and I know that this may seem like a weird grab, but I do wonder about something like the Thunderbolts. And I say this, and I've talked about this a few times with my friends. The Thunderbolts is giving me a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy vibe.
Yeah.
It's like it's a bunch of B characters that the nerds love that maybe not everybody else really knows about. They saw them in the background of a show or a movie or this or that, but they were never a main character. Now they're thrust into the center. And I do feel like that with a story like that, you're going to have a lot less meddling. And you've got Julie Louis-Dreyfus on board, who's like when I say a Hollywood heavyweight, like she's a tenured actor and performer that we all know Elaine Bennis. Like we all know Julie Louis-Dreyfus going back to Saturday Night Live in the 80s and then on to Veep on HBO. Like
she's such a force, like in Veep.
Yes.
Even in the Marvel stuff she's been in, like she just dominates every screen, like every
scene.
Yeah.
I am hopeful that you could get a movie like that out there with minimal meddling and maybe show, if you just let talented people do what they can do, you'll get a great product. What happens is when you get marketing people on the floor while things are being written, there's an amazing story about the Batman and Robin movie, about the plot of the movie being changed by toy executives because a scene didn't have a toy they could make to sell, and they changed the movie to sell toys, and the movie was garbage. And I do wonder if maybe they'll learn these lessons and just let a cool story breathe, Like, I think Rey as a character has so much potential to do something great and amazing out on their own terms, as opposed to just wielding the mantle of Skywalker, which I felt was kind of like, come on. I felt like her having to take that name was like diminishing to her own character. Like, give her own name at least,
Right. So moving on to something maybe a little more fresh and new, I think, right? Just in the interest of time, of course, is something that I was actually very pleasantly surprised about, and that is Rebuild the Galaxy. This is Lego Star Wars. And if you've not gone to Disney Plus and watched this, you need to do this. You can do it with your whole family. You can do it by yourself. It's okay. It's animated. I don't know what it is about Lego shows, but they just seem to get it. Like, they just get the humor. They're able to poke fun at themselves. Rebuild the Galaxy, for those that don't know, is kind of like the premise is basically an event happens. I won't spoil all of it, but an event happens that basically takes everything that we know from the galaxy and completely shakes it all up. Good guys are villains. Villains are good guys. There's chaos everywhere. Everything is kind of upset. We've got mismatches of TIE fighters and X-Wings. Everything it's turned on its head. And it's absolutely stellar. It's fun. It is funny. You have Darth Jar Jar finally. You have Darth Rey. This is amazing. Have you had a chance to watch this 4
I have
episode?
not. I have not watched it, and I've got to, though. I've got to.
Fred, you have to. It centers around 2 new characters, right? So Siggy and his brother Dev, and Jedi Bob, of course, who the way they play these names, like Jedi Bob's last name is Afal, which is adult fan of Lego, for those that aren't Lego nerds like me. So it's just so much fun. There's 4 episodes. Each one they're 26 minutes, but that's about 20 minutes of runtime each. So it's super consumable. It has a good story. It doesn't ever slow down. It's funny. Fred, you got to go watch this, man. I just implore you to go when you find time in your very busy schedule. Please go watch Rebuild the Galaxy and message me what you think of this show, because I didn't make the time for it, and now I'm like, why did I not make the time for this like day one? It's only been like a week or 2, but
the Lego sets though are amazing.
They are.
I was talking with one of my kids, and he was even saying, like, totally confident, well, looks like we'll be getting a 4th Millennium Falcon this Christmas made out of Lego. I'm like, oh yeah, because you're making those decisions.
Yeah, and you get C-3PO as a bounty hunter, like an evil bounty hunter, right? And oh gosh, Luke Skywalker. And what was really cool is they actually got the voices, like the original voices from these characters. Mark Hamill does Luke Skywalker. Ahmad Bass does Jar Jar Binks. You have Rose Tico is voiced by Kelly Marie Tran. You have a number of characters that are the characters from the movies and shows that are coming in to voice these characters. And I got to be honest, like they had me all the way up until the very end. When I am going to spoil this. If you don't want to be spoiled, that's fine. But basically, the Landolorian, I'm sorry, is absolutely epic. And then the baby, it is the baby with. It's just the way they did it was absolutely stellar. And it's kind of a sad story to start, but it's so good.
So it's a mashup of all eras and all things together in one big stir fry.
Yeah, kind of. It's really what they did. They just completely rebuilt everything and just redid it. So you see characters like Yoda and Palpatine and Jabba the Hutt, and
you gotta wonder if this whole idea came from just people like the writers sitting around playing the Star Wars Lego games and just being bad, being good, doing all the things you can do. I don't think that you can overstate the impact that Lego Star Wars had on the fandom. And I've got friends, one of my friends I grew up with who made fun of me for loving Star Wars so much. He started playing the Lego Star Wars game, and that made him a Star Wars fan to get into everything else. So their games are so great in terms of the freedom and being able to do everything. So them doing something like this with Lego rebuilding the galaxy to me is an easy fit.
Yeah, it's just so much fun. Again, it's original and it's fresh and it's lighthearted. We're going to talk about Donald Glover's comments about he just wants to see Star Wars being fun again. This is a great example of not taking ourselves too seriously and actually just having a really great time and still encompassing all the things that Star Wars really means, that really captures our, not only our imagination, but also the spirit of Star Wars, about what it's supposed to be, about being able to do some, the smallest of us can do the most amazing things, right? And do something influential. So please go out to Disney Plus and watch this. It is worth your time without question. All right, so a little extra news over here on the Skeleton Crew front, of course, which is going to debut for us here on December 3rd, so just around the corner. But we got our first look at some of the pirates. Of course, this is over on the Entertainment Fall TV preview. This came out a week or two ago, and basically was an interview with Christopher Ford and John Watts, who, of course, are producing the show and writing it. And it was basically all about them pirates, as I like to call it. And basically, we have here on screen, we've got Vane, of course, who is played by Marty Matulis. I'm going to get some of these names wrong. I apologize. Gunter, of course, is by Urkel himself, Jaleel White. We knew Jaleel White. He spoiled it, I think, at an Edmonton Oilers game of all places, if I recall this right. He was going to be a pirate in the series that came out last year. Of course, we have Brutus here, the big wolf-looking character. This is Albert's job, keeping track of what all of the species are and everything. So that's going to be the performance artist is Fred Tatascasor. I kind of butchered that.
Tessitore.
Tessitore, there you go. And then Stephen Aoyong. We have Pax, who is a character like second to the right. Of course, that's going to be by Mike Estes. And then we have Shailt, who is by Dale Sewells, who is on Orange is the New Black, I believe.
That bandolier with the pistols on it is so great. It's so pirate. It screams pirate. Like, to me, a lot of the things I'm seeing with Skeleton Crew it's fun. Like, it looks fun. It looks silly. It doesn't all like make sense. And that's fine. And I was talking with Albert online about this before. Like, this is a show for kids. Like, this is a show that is putting magic and fantasy back in Star Wars. It's making a like a science fantasy show. I think it's great. And having something that's a little bit off kilter like this with a guy with like front end loaded musket pistols on a bandolier next to Cyborg Urkel, that's great. That's perfect. I think that we need shows like this to get the young fans into the whole idea of Star Wars. Well, at the same time, giving us parents something, it's that guy from that show that we used to watch.
Right. And it just makes sense that they fit in during this really lawless time. And so the interview was talking about this. In fact, it just makes sense to have pirates in this time. The Empire is gone. The New Republic can't quite get its footing, right? They can't be everywhere all the time. So it just makes sense that this would start to rise. And we see this in The Mandalorian. And of course, we get a little flavor of some of the other content too. So that's going to be front and center. I think just makes sense. And I'm with you. I think the way that these characters look, they've nailed it. I think the old school Pirates of the Caribbean kind of weapons look is absolutely perfect. And I love it. I still want to know more about what Skeleton Crew is actually going to be about and what it's going to do, because we've still not got a great flavor for that. But I'm liking the path that we're on here. And when they start name dropping Monkey Island as a video game from LucasArts, I'm just on board. Just like, okay, just go and take my money, and I guess I'll show up and watch.
He's got to say something about families mattering or something at some point, or thank goodness it's Friday or something along those lines. You know?
Did I do that?
Yeah. If they don't,
I don't know, Fred. I don't know about that one.
did I do that? Whatever it is, it's so easy to do. Like I said, let great writers write great things. You know what I mean?
Right. So this should be, again, this is kind of all pointing towards hopefully a fun adventure, kind of maybe a coming of age adventure, really inspired by the Goonies, which I think is really, like, again, you just know this Amblin Entertainment style of movie making is really going to be embedded within the show. And I think if you're a fan of that, or if you're interested in that, or if you remember some of that, for those that are maybe our age, Fred, this might be something you might want to check out here come December 3rd. But again, I'm hoping we get a little more of the media machine here, as we get towards we're almost in October now. So we should start to see more stuff come here in the next few weeks, I would think. All right, next piece of movie news, or maybe movie news. So Natasha Lubridizo had made a comment about Ahsoka Season 2 that they are set to start shooting in August of 2025, so just under a year from now. If we get August 2025, when do you think this comes out? Is this do you think we'll get an Ahsoka Season 2 in 2026? And maybe the other question to that is, should they make Ahsoka, or do you think they are entertaining making Ahsoka into into a movie rather than a Season 2, like they're doing with Mandalorian, with the way that Disney's wanting to go? So do you think it might be a movie, and then do you think we might actually get this in 2026, or is this starting to push to 2027?
I don't know. I don't get this. Do a season, wait 2.5 years. Do a season, wait 3 years. I don't like that idea. Yeah. Maybe it's just because I'm old and I like give me a season a year, a season a year, a season a year, and scale back with what you're doing. Like, not everything needs to be these massive, over the top, epic everything all the time. Like, bring it back, make it more of a character story. But maybe, just maybe, they need to find the money to get the Bendu right, and then in Season 2 they'll bring in the Bendu. I have to bring it up.
Well, no, you're going to go there. I'm going to go, if Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka Season 2 doesn't give me Hondo Ohnaka, I am going to revolt, because Hondo is like the greatest character we've invented in the last 20 years, as far as I'm concerned.
I could have sworn I saw somewhere that Hondo is going to be involved with the Skeleton Crew, but it might just be from something from Star Wars Outlaws. Like, I was reading multiple things.
It's probably just me, just touting it from the mountaintops.
You're thinking so hard, you're putting it into ether that my brain is just picking it up.
I am. It has made it across the border, and it is penetrating the Canadian minds of everyone. I like this is working. I hope we get Hondo. Yeah, no, I think this is I'm really curious if we're going to move this to more of a movie or not. I'm with you. I don't like we have to wait so long to get content. I mean, I understand it. These are big budgets. They're almost like movies, so they do take longer to do. But we lose a lot of momentum with them, I think, too. And if they're going to be staggered, like Mandalorian, like they were kind of trying to set up before it all fell apart of sorts, of, okay, we're going to have these 3 or 4 shows and they're all going to culminate in something. But that strategy seems to have not panned out very well, or at least it's having to be kind of rebooted or restructured. Maybe this would have worked a little bit better, so it felt like we had momentum, but it just feels like, I think maybe what you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it just feels like we don't have momentum, and we keep stumbling and losing it. And then we have to wait a year or two before anything comes out. And then we feel a little lost as to what we're picking it up. And then maybe we're waiting again. People ask me, like, what's coming next? I'm like, well, we have Skeleton Crew, and then we don't know. Basically.
Yeah. Well, they were like mapping out like 15 years of shows and movies. And I remember when this was happening, like, this is too much, because you're pinning your hopes on the current zeitgeist. You know what I mean? Just like, move along as you go, like, evolve, let the show be what it is. Make it nimble, make it able to pivot with what the fandom is talking about, the things that are happening, again, like we were saying about the people on the top floor of the suits, the producers wanting to get their feet in. I think the idea of trying to make something for everybody is why they keep consistently failing and creating these really uneven things. Like if you watch The Acolyte, again, there's parts of it that are clearly meant for kids. And then there's parts of it that are clearly meant for adults. And you end up with this really weird, jumbled, uneven vibe. But then you watch something like Andor, and it's like, no, 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 no. They know who's watching. And it's just for them. And if you don't follow, bye-bye. Do that with everything. And I'm not saying you need to focus on the same demographic every time. Like, I believe that Ahsoka should have been made for the kids that grew up with Rebels. Like, that was their demo. That's their wheelhouse. Grow with the audience, you know? It's like, bring them along with you as you move forward. And with Skeleton Crew, you've got the kids that were of the age when Rebels came on TV. Follow them along. Like, and the Andor is for the kids that grew up with the Clone Wars. It's, to me, it's clear like what your lanes could be. And if you want to do a crossover-ish thing, I guess you could, but you don't need to.
Right.
You know, the movies should be the mass appeal. The shows can be finite, and make them smaller scale, make them more character, and then you can get more of them out there. You can tell great stories.
Yeah, and I think that was something we had talked about too. When you see crossovers in regular television, especially superhero television, when they cross over to the other show, like the tone of that character changes to the tone of the show as well. Like like when you have Arrow moving into the Flash show, right? Arrow is typically a really dark show and very serious, very brooding. But when he's on Flash, all of a sudden he's a lot more light. There's not as much darkness, right? The picture is different, but also the character seems to be different too. But I think this is something I'm with you. I think when you know what you want to, what is your story? What is it you're trying to get across? And let that be the tone of what you're doing, and kind of focusing on to make the best content possible in you know, fit what's expected of us, I think, in some ways, but also don't let some of the distractions get to you that impede our ability to be able to tell a consistent, you know, just a focused story that is around something that we want to be able to say and say clearly, right? So that some things just don't get in the way anymore. I think some things we're just trying to do too much with it.
Yes.
It feels like we have to throw the kitchen sink at it sometimes to be able to check a lot of boxes off, when let's just focus on the things that we want this show to do really well and see how that goes. I think that's what made The Mandalorian so successful in the first couple of seasons, was that it had a pretty strict focus about what it was doing, and that was moving the narrative forward, and everything else was kind of shaped around it. All right. Next piece of news here we'll try to get through. So Donald Glover was on the Wall Street Journal. They have a web series or a vlog series called The One. Or I think it's Wall Street Journal Style or something like that. But he had a quick little 30-second or a minute thing in here about Lando. And I kind of mentioned this before. Basically, they were asking if he's still working on it. The answer is yes. Him and his brother are still working on a script. Doesn't seem to be top priority or anything like that. But I think one of the things they asked him, like, what are you really hoping to do and accomplish with Star Wars? And he kind of called out some of what we're talking about here. He's like, Star Wars just feels so serious. It just feels too serious. I want to take, you have a character like Lando who just has fun in the galaxy of sorts. Like, he's a little bit carefree, a little irresponsible, but at the same time has a heart of gold, if we want to say that, but also just, it's just adventure, right? It's just fun. He just wants to bring something fun back into Star Wars. And I just love everything about what he was saying. Again, it was brief, but kind of like with Rebuild the Galaxy, things like that just, they give us a good adventure. And maybe Skeleton Crew will be something like this too, that just don't feel so serious. They have good implications, and we're invested in what's going on, but they just don't feel so dire all the time, or like the entire galaxy's at odds. And I love the idea. I've been a huge proponent for the Calrissian Chronicles. They should call this the Calrissian Chronicles and make it an Indiana Jones style series. I think that would just be absolutely so much fun and amazing. And I'm hoping the Glovers can figure out to find a way to do that. But what do you think about some of those comments? Do you feel like Star Wars is too serious? Or do you think we just need to have something that's just full of adventure and fun?
Absolutely, you do. It's a big galaxy. There's more than enough stories out there for everything. You can wear a million different hats and tell a million different stories. And the idea of episodic storytelling works because let's take something like The Bad Batch. You have these really heartfelt shows dealing with like PTSD, and what do you do with a generation raised for war when there's no war left? Like, what do you do with them? And then you have an episode where they're off with Wanda Sykes having an adventure stealing treasures,
Right.
And you can do all those things. And that's just one show that you can do all those things with. That's what's great about the Monster of the Week format, as opposed to the basically doing a 10-hour movie over 10 different episodes. So you can totally do a fun action adventure story with Lando Calrissian. You absolutely could. You could also do like a really like steamy like space brothel story with Lando Calrissian, and that would work too. Like
L3,
I don't
L3 being the wing droid.
absolutely.
Oh, that would be something.
And you don't, like I've said this a few times, you don't need to sell the same thing to a dozen people, especially when you're doing a dozen shows. Give each of those people their own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel sometimes guilty that I got Andor because it was so slick. It was so well done compared to other things that clearly were trying to be different things to different people. And that's not like, you can do that, but you can't do that if each episode is just so dramatically different as you go when they're all telling a singular story. It really, yes, steamy Stephanie. It really only worked with the Bad Batch because they were clearly like, the main story is on pause for this one. They're over here now doing something completely ridiculous. We'll come back to this, but we're not even going to touch it because that would ruin the flow of what we're doing here. And right. I do not miss Monster of the Week TV. Do you not miss that, like the way they used to do that? Like,
well, yeah, each episode is basically its own little story, right?
Yeah,
it's self-contained, and it might fit into a broader narrative, but at the same time, each week is like a really cool adventure, and it's fun. This is you and I. This is like 80s television, though, too. This is like A-Team, Knight Rider, that kind of storytelling in a 30-minute to an hour session, though.
I feel like the last big show to do that and do it well was really like Battlestar Galactica. They had all kinds of, we all knew the overall plot, but there was like at least a third of the episodes were their own thing that had nothing to do with the others. And I thought that was great. Some of them were the stupidest things I've ever seen, but some of them were absolutely fantastic, And I think you can do that and still do something great. And I do wonder, and going to the writer thing, I do wonder if that is the writers saying, I've got this big story that I want to tell over this many parts, versus somebody upstairs going, this is what you're going to do. Like, why not have, like, you've got a 10 episode season, have like 6 of them to build up to that plot. Like, you got open with the 2, have 2 Monsters of the Week, continue the story in the middle, 2 Monsters of the Week, and then finish it off with a big 2-parter near the end. Like, it's not hard. I could do it. Give me a job. Give Disney a call. Tell them, give them my number. I got an email. We'll figure it all out.
Right. So we'll hope. I have faith in the Glovers to hopefully bring something to life. And
he's great. He's so talented.
Yeah, I agree. I just hope that we actually get something like that's tangible here pretty soon. All right, we're running a little low on time here, but I did want a couple other things. So something that's coming here November 1st is going to be a new documentary on Disney Plus for John Williams. It's called Music by John Williams. So it's the quote from the Star Wars website. It's a new documentary film arriving later this year. Will chronicle the life and legendary career of John Williams, the visionary composer behind many of the most iconic film soundtracks in history. How we don't have this already is astonishing to me, because he's a living legend, much like James Earl Jones, right? A living legend. I cannot wait to watch this, because I just imagine just hearing people. So for those that don't know, I went to school to be a musician and to be a teacher and things like that. And so when I hear people talk about music that are passionate about it, that can do it in a relatable way, is really special. And John Williams has an ability to say that. And he's just so quietly spoken. And I just absolutely love when he talks about the process of doing it and what he has to capture, and when he starts humming little tunes. It's so fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this documentary, and November 1st can't come soon enough as far as I'm concerned.
So what's your favorite John Williams piece of music?
Oh my gosh, that's so difficult.
I know. I'm sorry. And cliche answers are fine, because I'd say, as much as I love Star Wars, Indiana Jones is my favorite. It gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah, the Indiana Jones themes. And oddly enough, I think it's one from Temple of Doom. Like the variations we get in there is probably one of my favorite, as well as Last Crusade. Dun, 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 dun. But I mean, the Superman themes. Yeah. Like Superman theme. Da, 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 da. I mean, like those are all amazing. Of course, the throne room in Star Wars and Return of the Jedi, as well as at the end of New Hope, like the big fanfares. all amazing.
I figured you
I
were
don't think
going to say
I don't think
E.T.
I
I
picked
thought
just
you'd
one.
say E.T., man. I figured you were going to go with E.T.
No, not really my thing.
Yeah.
Great score, great soundtrack.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Like
yeah,
all of the stuff that he worked on, the Superman especially, like that like, and I think maybe it could be because we grew up with that. Like that is Superman. Like you can't not think of Superman when you hear that music. But I remember watching Superman for the first time with my son when he was like 3 years old, in that scene where Christopher Reeve comes out, rips open the shirt, and my son just losing his mind about Superman, and the music comes up with a big Richard Donner crescendo, so great.
so
Like,
when I was 20, I actually got to play, and I was in a symphony at the time, and I actually got to play a John Williams medley for it. And it was like the greatest moment of my life. Like being able to actually play, like I'm like getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I had this big stupid grin on my face the entire time. Each one of the themes I just were so just embedded in who I was and who I identified as a kind of a nerd and a fan of all of this content, and be able to actually bring it to life
so
was
from a
absolutely
musical
stellar.
perspective, like, what do you think is one of the aspects of the way he writes that really makes everything punch so above its weight class? Is it the brass? Is it the way he uses brass?
I think early on, or at least in the 70s, that was a lot of it, right? And as we've got to more of like his Harry Potter scores, it became more sweeping. And I think you hear that in the Star Wars evolution too. When you hear a lot of the newer soundtracks from Star Wars, he's become a lot more in the strings area and more of these sweeping melodies. But I think it's really this leitmotif, right? He kind of brought this back to us of this repeating theme and then variations on a theme, very Aaron Copland type of thing. And I think that's the part that probably sticks with me the most for John Williams is how he can give you a theme, and then he will play with that theme so many different ways and intertwine it with others, and then he'll overlap it with somebody else's theme, right? And I know so many composers are amazing at doing this too, but John Williams was one of the first I remember doing a lot of this. At least in with Star Wars, of course, it's just so persistent throughout the entire film score soundtrack.
So it's like that
It's
idea
just
of like, don't bore us, get to the chorus. He's giving you the chorus, but then he's giving you like 5 different choruses
and
to make each one.
he reminds you
Yeah.
of it all the time, right? And when you see the character, you hear it and you identify the character with that at the same time. It's like when Kylo Ren stuff came out during Acolyte, people like jumped right all over it, right? Because it's so defined with that character. You're like, well, what the hell does this actually mean? And of course, they never told us that, but it's those types of things like that stick with you. And I think that leitmotif is one of the things that John Williams is probably going to be remembered most for. But I think with the punch, man, some of the brass in the 70s and 80s, I think in particular, were very much there. Just the idea that you could bring a orchestral symphonic score back to the movies was, of course, it felt it was a resurgence, right, when he started to do this with Jaws and Star Wars and things like that.
Well, what was
Okay.
his first big movie that he did? Would it have been Jaws? Because I remember, wasn't the idea that like Steven Spielberg came to him like, I need you, you're the one. What had he done before that?
Oh, there were a lot. We don't have time to go through all of it, but
Okay, sorry.
but I
Yeah,
think
yeah. That's what the documentary is
that's what
for.
the documentary for. You
Yeah.
and I will come back after November 1st, and we'll break this
Yeah.
down, and we'll do this. All right, so just a few more things here before we run out of all of the time. Hey, the Bad Batch is coming back to Dark Horse Comics. If you remember, Star Wars Hyperspace Stories issue 10 had the first edition, or the first on-page appearance of the Bad Batch in all of their glory, and now they're going to get a little 5-part mini series here. Which I apologize, the picture's a little bit small here, but
Look at
it's
that cover though. Oh, that's beauty.
oh, it's beautiful. It's so great. So it's called the Bad Batch Ghost Agents. This is part of the Hyperspace Story series from Dark Horse, which have been actually really good. These are a lot of fun. These are kind of adventure type of based comics. So the quick little blurb is in Star Wars Hyperspace Stories, the Bad Batch Ghost Agents. They are on a mission to hunt down the mysterious separatist ghost agent who executed a daring heist on Coruscant. I should read this in Tom Kane's voice. It's like the one voice I could do well. The thief's trail leads Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, and Tech to the seediest quarters of the galaxy, a place where kingpins and thugs threaten the clones' mission and their lives. So,
Oh, beauty.
yeah, it's so cool. I love that we got Tech lives. Clone Force 99 is back. I'm so excited about this. I know you're excited about this. Briefly, are you excited to see the Bad Batch get some more love here? I'm surprised we haven't got more from them, but they fit in the comics really well, I think.
Oh, absolutely, they do. They because they're a bunch of near do wells, and everybody
Yeah.
loves that type of ensemble of characters. It's like the Thunderbolts. Like they're everybody expects them to fail, but they always succeed. That's what makes them so great. They're perfect for comics. So it's great to see them off there doing their own thing. I do wonder if this will lead into other things, if we'll see an expansion on certain things that maybe we wanted to see more of in the series. We'll have to wait though.
Yeah.
You know what I'll do? I'll do some poking with some people I know that work at Dark Horse and see what I can find out for you.
I like that. This is why we keep you around, my friend.
Thank you.
No, I like this as like back when they were doing the Clone Wars comic series back in the day, like when the Clone Wars series was actually going on. Like this is such a great companion with it. If you didn't pick up issue 10 of Hyperspace Stories with the Bad Batch, you could probably find it in the dollar bin, $2 or $3. It's worth going to pick up. It's actually a really good story and highly recommend it. So again, Bad Batch coming back to comics and Dark Horse. This is going to release January 2025. So the final order cutoffs and things like that should be coming up here in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. So maybe a little bit further than that, but this will be coming around the bend. So January 25th. Another quick surprise that we got was without any kind of fanfare, Padawan's Pride, an Audible original audio drama, not audio drama, just an audio book. It's about a 4-hour story. It's an Obi-Wan and Anakin story. Anakin's about 12 years old. It's about 3 years after the Phantom Menace. It's just kind of an adventure, pod racing type of adventure, but also kind of a growing up story for Anakin. And Lauren's going to cover this on Jedi Marvel Archive for us as well. But this was a really cool kind of drop. And again, if you're an Audible subscriber, if you get the credit each month, highly recommend you go. There's actually several Star Wars Audible originals out there. Many of them are the classic stories of Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, but there's also some for High Republic and others like that as well. Padawan's Pride is one of those. The voice actor that does this and the narrator does a really good job of this too. And it's actually a pretty interesting story. It's kind of a mid-grade young adult type of book, so don't expect anything too heavy, but kind of a good adventure. And again, this dynamic of of Obi-Wan and Anakin at their younger stage of the relationship, I think is important for us to see more of how difficult and challenging it was, but also the moments of growth make these characters more interested. Do you get into audiobooks at all, Fred?
I do. I absolutely love audiobooks. I'm a sucker for a really well-produced audiobook for obvious reasons. Like when they're well done, they're well voiced and all that stuff, I love them. I do love the way Star Wars audio products tend to like pepper in a lot of sound effects and the music, and they sweep you along, and they really set the tone with the music in the background. I that's my favorite thing to do. And the Star Wars like audiobook versions of the Heir to the Empire trilogy played a huge role in the way I chose to execute Mud 79. So yeah, I'm a sucker for it. I really am.
Yeah, they're so good. And one of versus CPU in the chat is also saying that they released some of the Phase 1 High Republic children's book at no cost as well with the subscription, and that's absolutely right. Those are the ones that are kind of making their way into that as well. And actually, there's actually a High Republic Easter egg in Padawan's Pride as well. So for you High Republic fans, there's a bit of an Easter egg there too from the Shri Karai, the Nameless as well. So Obi-Wan actually talks about them. So kind of an interesting little tidbit there of something to check out. All right. And the last thing we have for tonight, more Lego collectibles, the Jabba's Sail Barge, Ultimate Collectors, the UCS Ultimate Collector Series, coming in at a, how much is this thing? Good Lord. $500, 3,942 pieces, about 30 inches long. It does come with 11 minifigs, including Jabba, Leia. I think this is Slave Leia for all those that are really curious about that. Bib Fortuna, C-3PO, Max Rebo, Kitaba, Vizam, Woof, Gamorrean Guard, Salacious B. Crumb, and R2-D2. So some of these are the first time they've seen these characters, or some of these characters don't get released very often. So this might actually be. We got a couple of pictures here. You can actually see it's actually a pretty good model, but $5, man. Lego just seems to keep churning these things out, and I don't know. I know I've heard you guys talk about this on previous shows too. There's not a lot of shelf space, as well as not a lot of support on the family side to continue funding the old Lego series here.
I've made a big push for Barad-dûr for Christmas, so it's a bit late in the season to switch gears. But I when those UCS series are so fantastic, and I don't think that I've been as impressed with any that I've seen since the Landspeeder came out. The UCS Landspeeder, I think, is probably that and the B-Wing are like my favorite of all the Lego UCS things. Then the B-Wing was sort of like was out and then gone. And it was like, because everyone thinks the B-Wing is goofy, and when you compare it to the rest of them, it does kind of stick out. It's a little bit differently scaled than the others, but it's so cool. Like, it's so big and so goofy. But the land speeder itself, like, that's chef's kiss. I love it.
Yeah, I think this one is an interesting set. While expensive, this one in the picture I've got up here, the sides actually fold down to
Good.
reveal the interior, so it's actually more playable in some of this stuff. So I think
That could be worse. My kids will want to touch it, and then they'll ruin it.
Oh, that is a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand it's a toy, but it's not a toy to touch and to play with. But I like that it does have playability to it. Legos should be played with to an extent.
One time my
within
kids were
reason.
arguing about which of my Lego sets they'll get when I die. Like, which one, the other one will, I'll get this one, you'll get that one. I'm like, is this where we are? Is this, which speaks volumes about the quality of the product that the people at Lego are putting out when you think about it.
And they value your hobbies.
Absolutely.
Let's look at this in a more positive way, right?
Yeah. I'm a cool guy.
Right. But this actually does look to be kind of a cool set. Again, $500. You do get a lot of minifigs, including a Jabba the Hutt minifig, which is nice. You do get the actual plate with the Jabba sail barge and some stats there for it. So I think this is actually a pretty nice set, and it's actually a good size. I mean, this is longer than about 2.5 feet long. So I think people would be satisfied with some of that, especially if you really like this orangish brown parts.
I do.
These sails are actually really nice too. Those are unique parts.
The Barracuda Bay set with the brown wood looking stuff, I think it looks cool because everything's like, when you look at Lego, almost all of it's gray. Star Wars Lego is a lot of light and dark gray. So the brown pops. I like it.
Exactly. So with that, we're going to wrap the show up. Fred, thank you for joining me tonight. And why don't you let everyone know where they can find you? And also, we had a question in the chat there for you from my Star Wars guys asking for an update on the next season of Mud 79. So maybe you could kind of work that in there. And we talked about it before the show. But yeah, let us know where to find you in Mud 79 in particular.
You can find me. Instagram is where I'm the most active. I post a lot of stuff on Twitter. I will be honest, I've kind of like old man begrudgingly kind of posted less stuff on social media, but I've got a lot of comic book work coming out soon, so I got to start getting more active. But yeah, at fearless_Fred. Mud 79 season 3 is almost entirely written. The question is finding the time to get it all put together. It's the editing that is the beast, and it will be something that because when I do it, I want to do it like in one fell swoop, get it all done, right. Get it all out, so no one's just sitting around waiting. I might actually like release like the written version before I produce it. I haven't really decided yet. I've got to talk to my producer about what she thinks I should do, but I love the ending. It's not happy though. I'll just say that.
Oh boy, don't rip our hearts out, Fred.
Yeah. We've got to, if you've been listening to it, it can't possibly end well.
Exactly, right. But yeah, you can go check out Mud 79 on all of the major platforms. You'll find out they're in Spotify, as well as, what was the actual website you guys promoted at as well?
It was just, if you looked at Curious Cast is where that's the podcast channel that is hosting it. So
yeah, fantastic. So
podcast network, that's the term.
Fantastic. Yeah, and thanks to all of our folks that came out to us in the live stream tonight. Music Train, My Star Wars Guys, Trent, Millennium Workshop, Whatever vs. CPU, Noah Rogers, Jorge Castro, Wookie Talks, Skywalker's Academy, and Steph. Thank you all. We see you folks out in their background too. Again, Albert and I will be right back here in just a few minutes with episode 2 of Star Wars A New Hope, the television series. So we hope you'll join us over there, cantinacast.com/Patreon, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to this and want to come out and see Fred's beautiful face and be able to join us on the live stream, we would certainly appreciate it. Aside from that, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.